Hello again, and welcome to the show. So, we have a question of is this a good time to buy gold? Is this a good time to buy gold? That's an excellent question that we have. And if we look technically, gold again is down from its high of about $2,400 down to right now is sitting at 4,400. So when we're looking at that gap, right, we're saying, okay, gold obviously is now making a move upward, right? And we do see that gold has the potential to go up to its high that we hit last year. And if it takes another 6 months to get to that height of 5,400, then we would say that it probably is a good time to consider purchasing if you are a gold buyer, right? This is a good time to start accumulating. Also, if you have not bought gold before, but you're interested in buying gold, this is not necessarily this is not investment advice, but we're giving the information to see that um, this would potentially, if this is what you're looking for, then this could be a good buying opportunity in gold because from the height up until about the last 2 months, 2 months ago in June, we've kind of hit a floor. All right, we hit the floor of 4,000, which we would say is about a 25% decrease or so. But when we're looking at the opportunity for those who missed out on that run upward over the last 2 years, where gold really took off and really it took off January of 2025. Uh, it took off pretty substantially in that 1 year space. So, is it a good time to buy? I would say if you're a buyer, you might want to get your money together and look at uh, this opportunity. Also, we want to look at just a little bit at silver, and I'm going to do another video on, on silver uh, in particular. But there's another commodity that really took off on an upward trend when we look at the last year or two. But again, same as the same as the gold prices, it kind of cooled off since January of this year. But yeah, the prices of silver, for example, right now we're at $66 per ounce for silver. And if you look at the height, right, year to date, let's see here. So January 1st of this year, silver was sitting at $72. All right, now let's look over the past year. Let's see. We'll go to about the last year and a half, looking at January of 2025. So January 1st, 2025, silver was sitting at $30, $29.14. And yeah, it went up the next month, $32, $33 by March of 2025. And by July, it's up getting $38. So we're seeing a real fast upward trend from, we'll say, the beginning of 2025, and really by the middle of 2025 it just took off. It just shot up like a rocket. So by October 2025, gold was sitting at $54 an ounce, and just took a nice parabolic move from October of 2025. It went up to about 40, 50, about 48 to $50. And by January of 2026, at its peak, it was at about 119, I want to say. So that was from January 2025, it was at about $30, and it went to about 120. So that's about a four, let's see, yeah, about a 4xer, just four times the price. It just increased that fast up in that shorter time period. And when you look really over the last 5 years, silver had been hovering around that 20 to $25 range. So now we're looking today, silver is at $66. So from its height, from its peak at in January at around 115, 120, it has since been tanking, and it's been having lower highs and lower lows. So we'll say from January 2026 to February, end of February, it had gone from about 120 to about 93, $90, and it's just going lower and lower. And we've kind of reached over the last few months, it seems like we're kind of reaching that bottom where it's now trying to have a breakout of higher highs and lower highs, where it's nice. So we look at the trend, it's been really from last year just shot straight up, and it's kind of been going down like this. And now over the last 2 months, it's kind of just been scribbling right in that middle area. And we're no longer seeing lower highs and lower lows, but it looks like we're getting to the point as of about July, July of this year, we'll say last month, it kind of hovered at that 50, we'll say 58 to 60 mark, 57, 58, and it's just hovering in that area. And now over the last week, we'll say uh, August 3rd of this year, it has gone from $58 to $66. So we're seeing, again, we're seeing a nice upward trend. We're looking at silver having a similar move to gold. And so we're looking and considering, if you're a purchaser of silver, or if you felt that you missed out on a nice move upward, you're looking at really a 50% discount from its high of 120 down to its low period of about 50, excuse me, about $60. So again, even with the same similar situation as gold, we're looking at silver moving on the same trajectory. And we would consider, if you are a purchaser, you want to consider actually going ahead and looking to add that into your portfolio. We'll see. Let's see here. Let me see if I can find uh copper. And now, when we look at going back to gold, why are central governments and why are people actually looking at adding gold to the portfolio now? Um, when you look at ask the question, how long have people been not purchasing gold, right? Because we were actually on the gold standard. The world has been on the gold standard for the thousands of years, really since the beginning of time. If we want to be pretty uh, blunt about it, it's been a long time, and so from the end of World War II, right, America kind of changed the financial system, right? America became the dominant power. It was because of the US that um, the World War was won on the side of the victors. And so, also, what had happened was all of the European countries were selling their gold to America in order to be able to fund the world wars there, which the world wars devastated the area financially, right? And obviously, they had to rebuild the country once the war was over. But when the war was over, America had all of Europe's gold, right? So America and the Bretton Woods Conference set up the system, and with the help of Britain, the old power, right? Because at the time, Britain was the dominant power in the world up until the end of uh, I want World War II, World War One, and World War II. They were, spending all their gold for America to be able to finance them. So once that time period came about, America had the majority of the gold, um, and thus started its imperial reign, right? Then, but you have to say, okay, you had the Federal Reserve created in 1913, right, which was ironically right before the start of World War One, right? World War One happens the next year, 1914. So you started having a lot of printing of money here in the U.S. and America printed money um, in order to fund the wars in World War One and Two, and then their currency became so important, right? Because they were not just funding it; they were loaning this money out, right? And so then the European powers had to pay back the debt, right? From the money that they borrowed. Once the U.S. Started to become the banking center of the world, right? Because that's really what the Federal Reserve was all about, was controlling the banking system of the world. Um, but once that happened, they pretty much had confiscated the gold of the major powers of the world, but also they confiscated, I want to say 1933, they confiscated the gold of the American citizens, right? So, but before that time period, we were on a gold standard and we were also on a silver standard, right? So there wasn't as many dollars that were circulating because the gold standard means that based on the amount of gold that you have in your bank, this is pretty much an IOU. That's what it is. Is this is what your receipt is for the amount of gold or silver that you had at the time. But prior to that time period, uh, people were using silver. Silver was the main currency of the country. Um, but then they expanded their financial system and started loaning out money to the rest of the world, all of the other uh, countries, what they call the third world countries, the undeveloped or underdeveloped countries. They were giving IMF loans, right? International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. They were loaning out money And so all governments started to take on the dollar in order to hold as a financial instrument in their banks. Um, and then you look from that period from 1933 to 1971. um, Nixon. Nixon cut off the gold standard and put us on the oil standard, right? So the petrodollar, petroleum dollar, and they said that we're not going to use gold, right? And that we're no longer on the gold standard. So from that time period, right, we're looking at a 80-year time period from the 30s, really almost 90 years to today. Gold was not being accumulated by the banks and the governments of the world. They were accumulating dollars. So why is gold important? Because every dollar, every currency has its day in the sun, right? This is not the first currency in the world, right? But currencies have to be backed by something. And if it's not backed by gold, gold has always been the most secure asset that people want to hold, and especially governments want to hold in their vaults. And so we'll say we definitely based off of the history, we're getting to the point where that um, where gold is again starting to be accumulated by the world powers and the world banks. So if you think that gold is something important, and if you think that silver is something important, you might want to look at adding that to your collection. Good. I'm seeing in the chat that we're having people that's actually participating in the purchasing of gold and gold backs, right? Gold backs is another thing that's important, right? We're looking at different financial assets that we want to have in our portfolio. And the thing about having a portfolio, right, when you're investing, you want to have some more than one thing in your portfolio, right? A lot of people may have a 401k or may have an IRA, but you have to know what's in there and what you have, right? And when you say, okay, what do I have and how can I increase the value of what I have, you want to start looking at different assets. And so this is what is going on um, with all of the different countries of the world, right? They're looking and they're saying, okay, what can I purchase? And so then as an investor, you want to look to see what is of value and what will maintain its value. All right. So um, just looking at the US dollar has lost a lot of its purchasing value. Right? We look from the 1920s, right, 100 years ago, up until today. Uh, Gold was $20 an ounce, right? And if gold was $20 an ounce then, and we're looking at gold being at $5,400 an ounce today, then it's maintaining and really dominating and showing its power in comparison to the US dollar. So then you want to find assets that will increase in value, that will give you something that you can hold on, right? That you don't want to have one or two of you don't want your portfolio to just be one or two assets, right? You want to consider diversifying, finding the different things that will be good to put into your basket of goods. And then again, we said we would look at copper. So even again, when we talk about gold, and we also have to obviously mention silver again. Silver is a good investment. Um, it obviously has industrial use, right? Industrial value. And when we can compare these assets again to the US dollar, the US dollar only has the ability to be used as a currency, right? It can be moved like a current, like water. It can move back and forth between hands, but it does not have any value in terms of practical use aside from just exchanging the dollar for the goods that have value, whether it's food, house, uh, gold, silver, whatever. You can use the money, you can use the dollar, but what value it actually has overall is actually comparative, is falling like a rock off a cliff. Let's see here. So it looks like the price of copper is at 650, 659 a pound. So again, if you don't have gold and if you don't have silver, if you say, okay, well, I can't afford gold, I can't afford silver, then copper is a good asset that you want to look to include in your portfolio. And we have to understand with copper, copper has again an industrial use um, as a conductor of electricity. It has it's used in housing, and so there's also a shortage of copper. So it's not really showing up in the price as much as the value of silver and gold have over the last few years, but it still has taken a nice move up. So just looking again at the different um, assets and different commodities that are good to add to your portfolio, you want to consider finding ways to add gold, whether it's uh, the bullion or it's the gold backs, as was mentioned in the chat. These are things um, that you want to the dip. And I'm seeing uh, Greg Holloway says that earlier I bought 10 pounds of granulated copper as well. That's good. That's excellent. So, yeah, copper is a good purchase at this But all of these assets are going to be good to look at: gold, silver, and copper, because when we look at the financial markets, there's a lot of volatility. There's a lot going on. Stocks are up and down, right? And they've, like, the S&P 500 has been going up pretty well over this since January. But again, even if you own stocks, which is a good investment, you want to into what companies you want to buy into, but you also want to look at